And now I'm going to read a prelude to the last chapter, which was done 7 years later after my trip home. 7 years passed since I returned from Namibia. I have had rare moments of personal excitement, doing the same job day in and day out in family court, representing parents of kids who are taken into state custody for one reason or another. I'm doing the same 1-hour daily commute. This was written while I was living up in Newcastle. But I live in a very nice place called Lake Club Apartments, and it's a well-settled place. Most of my old friends and family are either gone over to the other side or just too old to socialize or get out much, and no young ones are around to replace them. I spend most of my time out of court coaching judo to kids at the Murphy School or reading and researching the World Wide Web for evidence about others' near-death experiences or events that might prove as true issues that I discovered when I had my own personal near-death episode. A boring life is an apt description. However, I knew I was onto something with this research effort, and also knew my detractors, as usual, would say, "He's crazy." So as a preemptive strike one day while waiting around the courthouse, I asked a man I respected on this very subject, Joseph C. Zingaro, Ph.D., "Hey Doc, do you think I'm nuts?" And here is his official response. It's an evaluation which was done as if it was done for a court case. Mental health status, post-near-death experience. That would be me. I met Tommy Little in court. He was cross-examining me. I'm a psychologist, and I was testifying on the results of a forensic evaluation I have done on a client he was representing. I've done several hundred forensic evaluations and been cross-examined by many different attorneys, but none so briefly as Tommy. He may have asked me 3 or 4 questions, period, to the point and to make the point to help his client. I testify in courts often. I like testifying. It brings closure to the evaluation. There's often a lot of downtime in between the hearings and while you're waiting to testify. So it must have been during one of those downtimes, waiting for court to start, that Tommy and I began to talk. We probably talked about how our lives and work led us to where we are now. But a short time later, right out of the blue, Tommy emailed me a draft copy of his book, A Lonesome Warrior, a true story of a near-death experience. I don't have much spare time on my hands. When I had difficulty putting the book down, all 767 pages of it, I knew there was something about the book or Tommy that had frozen my interest. 2 things struck out at me as I read The Lonesome Warrior: depression and Zazen. In his book, Tommy is often depressed or tearful, meditating, and using Zazen all the time. He claims he uses it to teach, to learn, to relax, to get keyed up. He tells me practicing Zazen has changed his entire life. He's developed a specific protocol and has used it while running a drug and alcohol rehabilitation camp for 9 years to help people with addictions and mental health problems while he was in Africa. It began to sound too true. I asked him about doing some research on Zazen. What is Zazen? Is it truly effective? Can I find a way to measure its effectiveness? Have I stumbled onto someone who has a new way of helping others? He mentioned often, there's not much written about it anywhere. So here's Tommy's own personal explanation of Zazen, direct from our conversation. And this is quotes from me. Zazen is a martial arts relaxation and training technique. It's just part of an exercise I do and use to relax folks I coach and teach. I learned it in drill instructor school at Parris Island, South Carolina, while I was a young Marine. I actually do it for hours every day when I have the time. I probably have done 4 hours today. It's a snow day here in Delaware. I live alone now, so I get plenty of time. It was the same in Africa. I had plenty of time in the desert, and the days were all very long. I use it to get relaxed, so I can change my brain waves from alert and exist in another place and daydream about everything under the sun. Sometimes I write about the stuff I learn that seems to be true because I know I saw it or heard it in my near-death experience. Although it made no sense at the time, it makes sense to me now, and I write what I understand. But I only write when I find a second source. And you should hear the stuff I can't prove that I never talk about. I began to do some reading in professional, this is the doctor speaking again. I began to do some reading in the professional journals and Google to find out what I could about Zazen, meditation, and addictions. Then one day, Tommy asked me, "Doc, do you think I'm nuts?" He was serious. Tommy does have some very unorthodox ideas and opinions. He's not shy about sharing any of them, nor does he seem to care if you listen. He just feels a need to share what's on his mind about spirituality, the origin of the universe, life itself, and the afterlife, and Zazen. He's like a typewriter, writing words and thoughts of the typist, all by himself. Tommy does not see himself as a typist. Thoughts and ideas come to him, and he feels a need to type and then send them on. His near-death experience left a lifelong mark. He feels a compulsion to give away whatever he's learning. I do not believe that Tommy would ever claim to be or call himself a mystic. Yet, Carl McColman writes, mysticism is, ultimately, simply the art of going to heaven before you die. Or perhaps better said, the art of letting heaven emerge with you now. Like many individuals who have had near-death experiences, Tommy is convinced he's been on the other side. Linda Griffith, medical doctor, a psychiatrist, writes that individuals who have had near-death experiences are not in any way significantly different than those who have not had such experiences. About 5% of the population has actually had near-death experiences. These individuals are from all walks of life and all religions or non-religions, for example, atheists. Dr. Griffith points out potential after effects of near-death experiences. These after effects may include changes in the perception of oneself, in one's relationship with others, in one's attitude toward life, experiencing realistic paranormal phenomena, for instance, out-of-body experiences, and as well as alterations in perception, for instance, heightened sensations. It's difficult for people's basic character to change once one has reached adulthood. I am neither a theologian nor a Bible scholar, but I do remember a story about St. Paul. After getting knocked off his horse, he became a crusader for Christianity. Previously, he was a crusader for the individuals hunting the Christians. Paul's basic character did not change. He remained a crusader. However, the goal of his behavior changed, to preach instead of prosecute. Tommy's near-death experience did not change his character, but it did change his focus. Tommy is as sane or insane now as he was when he was a younger man. But you already know his past and that he is now sober for many, many years. That helps. The drive one sometimes sees in addicts to feed their addiction can easily be found in Tommy. Maybe whatever events, genes, traumas, etc., that came together for the perfect storm of addiction, kidnapping his own spirit, have been quieted, but whatever it took to help Tommy maintain his sober mind worked. Depression is sometimes seen as being caused by change or a need for change. We are off balance either because we are not used to the change that has happened, or we are bored, empty, or unfulfilled because we need a change to happen. I believe the depressed mood that I alluded to earlier is not a clinical depression requiring medicine or psychotherapy to treat. I think the moods Tommy experiences are sometimes heightened because of his near-death experience. And as he grows older, his ability to empathize with others also grows. As an empathic, he may have difficulty not being pulled into emotional experiences of others, sharing in their happiness and sorrow. I believe Tommy's near-death experience has helped him shed the need for cover. I like that line. I shed my need for cover. He is who he is, brave and bold. He is genuine. Sometimes we change who we are to fit in with who we are around, Tommy does not do that. So he might be described by others as provocative, in your face, or stubborn. Tommy knows his dark side. He accepts its continued existence and tries to steer clear of it. He has a tendency to intuit or feel parts of you, which you might not want to own up to or acknowledge. I have watched him interact with others. Sometimes they seem to laugh, then look away and hope he moves on or changes the subject. Sometimes they listen to his point of view with interest, but just can't go as far as he does. Tommy does not appear reckless, nor intent on making others feel uncomfortable. He's selective about what he talks about to others, and I think has an innate sense of who may or may not be open to hearing his perspective or ideas. I never did a formal psychological assessment of Tommy. I did not administer any psychological tests. He told me the reason he didn't do that is he figured I could guess the answers to all the tests. He's right, I did it all my life. I did not give Tommy a diagnosis. As part of his request, I did visit him at his home. The home he was renting at the time was part of several townhouses. It was very clean, very open. Everything in the house was there for a purpose. He did have some knickknacks, but they all had a specific meaning or memories behind them. His refrigerator was the same, just enough food to get him through a couple of days. Nothing was going to go to waste because he had bought too much. He apparently lives his life like he cross-examines witnesses, to the point, wasting no energy whatsoever. Tommy's beliefs and ideas make sense to him given his life experiences. He is who he is. His ideas do not flow from delusions or psychosis, just a brief trip to the other side. He's told me that he only talks about when shares ideas from his near-death experience that he can verify through a second source, like science. Did you ever wonder why law enforcement sometimes uses mediums to help them solve difficult cases? Or why they might hypnotize a witness to recall information, even though the witness's testimony in and of itself isn't admissible in a court and legally can't be used? Mediums and witnesses under hypnosis may recall or produce clues that could help law enforcement solve a crime. However, mediums and witnesses under hypnosis can also produce false clues. False clues are information that the medium or witness may recall that have absolutely no basis in reality, even though the false information feels genuine as true or verifiable information. That's why I always use and insist on a second source. I don't trust my own self. Law enforcement accepts this dilemma. So does Tommy. He is cautious in sharing paranormal information and insists he is sharing what he believes he can verify only through science. Tommy has other ideas and memories from his near-death experience that so far he cannot verify through science. I think that's why he may wonder about his sanity at times and need some validation for parts of his experience that he may never be able to validate with the tools of science. Imagine yourself trying to explain space travel to someone from the Middle Ages. We learn incrementally. If the next lesson to be learned is too big, too far from the previous lesson, you will not learn it. You cannot go from playing chopsticks on the piano to Beethoven. He went from the Middle Ages and chopsticks to space travel and Beethoven. He has been waiting a long time to tell his story, and new scientific discoveries are helping him find his voice and the courage to believe he might not be nuts. I don't think he is. That was written by Dr. Z, which I call him. I see him all the time in court. And he has all his references in here to back up his evaluation.